Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words. Today we are playing one of the most quintessential combo decks in the Legacy format, Sneak and Show. Essentially, what this deck wants to do is cheat into play Emrakul the Aeon's Torn or Griselbrand with either Sneak Attack or Show and Tell. These creatures are so powerful that they basically win the game even if it's just one attack step, because you'll be either drawing a load of cards from the Griselbrand or you'll be destroying all their permanents with the Emrakul. That's usually enough to put the game away. We also have a nice suite of cantrips to find all of our lovely pieces here. And then we also have an Omniscience, which is another thing that we can put into play that lets us hardcast the Emrakul or the Griselbrand, which obviously is just as good as cheating it into play. But this also means that if you put this in, you can play all of your cantrips for free and hopefully pull your way through your entire deck and win with one of these cards anyway. So that's the main game plan. How does this deck differ from other versions of it? So looking at some of the recent lists that have been doing well, it seems to be this sort of plan with the few singletons of the Intuition, the Brazen Borrower, the Fable of the Mirror Breaker. These have become sort of staples of the deck now, from what I can see anyway. I'm not an expert on this deck, but I've played against it many times, but I've never really piloted it myself. So I was curious to actually give it a go and see how it feels. So how are we getting these into play early? Well, we've got a load of soul lands, we've got some Lotus Petals, and we have the one of Spirit Guide. So that's how we're trying to cheat these into play ahead of the curve. So not only are we trying to skip the curve on our big fatties, we're trying to skip the curve on the thing that puts our big fatties in the first place. So it's a pretty simple game plan for game one. And then for the sideboard, we've got some interesting tools here. So Surgical Extraction is a given. You need some ways of interacting with your opponent's graveyard. Pyroblast, Red Elemental Blast. There's a lot of blue spells that you need to counter here. We've got some Artifact Destruction in Meltdown and Abrade. We've got Kozilek's Return in case you need to sweep away a load of 2/2 zombie tokens or a load of elves. Another Fable of the Mirror Breaker, which helps shore up your post-board games, especially when you're bringing in things like Fury, because you can then copy the Fury and just keep machine gunning down all the little creatures, which is quite a nice little tool. We got Magus of the Moon. So this is a deck that actually gets to play Disruption for the opponent's mana base, even though it's a combo deck, which is unlike some of the ones I've been playing recently, which have had very sort of vulnerable mana bases to Blood Moon. We actually get to be the Blood Moon deck. And then some defense grids. So if we've got to get through a load of permission, we can just throw up the grid and then combo to our heart's desire. That's pretty much it. Like I said, I'm not really an aficionado with this deck, but it's something I'm very familiar with because I've been playing Legacy since like 2007-ish. So this deck has been a thing in various forms for a long time. So let's just see how we do and fire into a league. So this is the opening hand we've been dealt. So if we can resolve an Intuition, we can go and get a Show and Tell. Or if we can get some more mana, we can Sneak Attack. But we don't have any protection, and we would need a soul land before we get to do anything with the Sneak Attack. So I'm not sure this is one that we can keep. I think the deck's got 5 soul lands, so that's not really enough to make me want to keep this hand. I can get a lot of 6-card hands that are just as good as this or better, so I think we will mulligan. So I'm going to be leaning on this Preordain and this Brainstorm to find me lands. But I think it's probably okay to do. We have a little bit of protection as well, so we're going to keep this. And we've got a spare Griselbrand, so we can bottom that one. A Chrome Mox, so our opponent might be some sort of Storm combo, or there might be a Prison deck. Douthie Voidwalker. Does this impact what I'm doing? Not particularly. But the only issue with this is if I Show and Tell and they put in a Helm of Obedience, they can just straight up kill me. So there is certainly an interest to counterspell this. But I have this Brainstorm. I think we do counter this. The reason we're pitching the Brainstorm here is because the Preordain won't Brainstorm lock us. It's unlikely we have to worry about Wastelands in this game though. So we're going to Preordain here. So there's the Ancient Tomb. So that gives us turn 2 Griselbrand. So I'm going to put the Ancient Tomb on top, then the Flusterstorm, so I can have Force of Will blue card for the next turn. So we still have Force of Will blue card, and we've got Show and Tell Griselbrand next turn. And because we countered the Douthie Voidwalker, we're not liable to die to a Helm of Obedience if they have one. Sheoldred. Whenever an opponent draws a card, they lose 2 life. That feels pretty bad since I'm about to Griselbrand, so I think we will get rid of this one as well. So our opponent's only got 2 cards in hand. They could have another Sheoldred. Should be a bit awkward, but there we go. Let's do the thing that we're supposed to do with our deck. What has our opponent got? So they've got Shouldered, so we can't actually draw with this because it'll kill. Is it 2 damage I take? When our opponent draws a card, they lose 2 life. Yes, so this is pretty bad for us actually. If we draw off of this guy, we'll die, which is why we counted the last one. So this is going to be tricky. So they could have Sudden Edict to deal with our Grizzlebrand. This has Death Touch, so I do not want to block. I can race it because I have a 7/7 lifelinker. And I'm losing 6 a turn. Very strange game. So I think we play this out. This hurts us a little bit, but it means if we draw an Emrakul, we can just win the game on the spot. Khan. So this is going to be bad for us. What are they going to find? They could find a Pithing Needle to deal with the sneak attack, so they're not, but then they are dead on board. Ensnaring Bridge. Okay. So we have a Brazen Borrower in our deck to deal with this situation. There is the Emrakul. So what's going to happen here is this is just going to tick us down behind an Ensnaring Bridge. So we've got a few turns to try and draw the Brazen Borrower that we need here. So not ideal, and all of our cantrips are a lot worse in the face of a Shoulder as well. It's a powerful card. But yes, this basically triples the cost. So it'll take 21 life off me if I draw 7 cards. So playing this is a bad idea at this stage of the game. So I think we're actually going to lose this game because of this Khan. Mycosynth Lattice. So they can play the Lattice out here, which is going to shut off all my permanents. So that's going to be the game there. What is good here? Ways of destroying artifacts seem relevant here. Fury can hit Planeswalkers, so we can get rid of the Khan. We can get rid of some of their mitty little guys. Favour the Mirror Breaker, useful little thing you can have. So how do we board things out? So the Flusterstorms probably aren't great here. So the Flusterstorms, they can stop discard on us, but they can't counter any of the things they're using to win the games. It doesn't hit Khan, it doesn't hit Doughty Voidwalker, it doesn't hit Helm of Obedience. So I don't think we can play these. If we're boarding in the Furies, I'm kind of tempted to board in the Favour of the Mirror Breaker as well, because this just gives us more looks. Obviously, the problem here is that getting through the Shoulder is going to be an issue. So we're kind of relying on the Fury to do that. The counter spells feel important here. I don't think Omniscience. I think we can probably board out the Omniscience. Can we board out the Intuition? The Intuition just queues us up for one of our hits, so it kind of pieces together everything else. So we're probably cutting some of the cantrips since they have a Shoulder and that's bad for us. We can't go too low on blue cards. If we're boarding out all these blue cards and putting all these red cards, is that going to be enough blue cards? It should be fine. This is a game plan still. We're just going to try and rely on the Furies and stuff rather than going over the top with the Omniscience. So maybe we bring that back like this. So our plan is to just get it. Although the Grizzlebrand is very weak here because of the Shouldered. So there is an option of trimming a Grizzlebrand and keeping an Omniscience in. I think being able to cast our spells for free is pretty good. Is it worth trimming 2 Grizzlebrands? That is the question. Obviously Grizzlebrand's still fine off of a sneak attack though. I think we'll submit like this and see how we go. So what does this hand do? I'll have to use my Lotus Petal for blue mana here. So our Ponder or Brainstorm will have to find a land and a Show and Tell. So I think we can mulligan this. This has got pieces here. The Meltdown is going to be marginal, I think, but we can always pitch it to Favour the Mirror Breaker, or actually I think we just put it at the bottom of our library here and say done. And then we lead off with a Ponder. So we have turn 2, we can make the sneak attack with this hand. So I think that's fine for us. We still need to get the threats though, so we need to draw the Intuition and then get the sneak attacks in next turn. Is it worth playing out the Lotus Petals first in case of discard? They're probably not taking the Lotus Petals anyway, but they could be playing some sort of other prison effect. I've seen black decks in the past playing Trinisphere, so I think getting these down would be useful to avoid that. Sorcerer's Spyglass. So at this point we're going to lose our ability to use the sneak attack. Bit awkward. Okay, so now we have this. I think we're in the market for playing the Favour of the Mirror Breaker here. It'll cost as the Lotus Petal, but the creature we're going to get is going to be able to get everything. So I don't think our opponent's deck can afford to play any Wastelands given the fact that they've got all these Ancient Tombs in their decks as well. So I think we're okay getting a Volk, but do we need to get a Volk? And we can get a Mountain here just in case, on the off chance they have some sort of disruption for lands. I don't think it's going to cost us to play around the potential. So we'll cast this Favour of the Mirror Breaker and we'll get ourselves a Goblin, and then we might have to pitch our sneak attack So I think we want to pitch Sneak Attack and Ancient Tomb here. So you have 3 mana here, and we're looking for a Show and Tell. So we're looking for a Show and Tell and a creature. So we'll play this out. Play this out for the same reason we played out the last one, in case there's some sort of weird Trinisphere shenanigans. So we can start getting some treasure now. So our intuition can find us Show and Tells, but we don't know if we need Show and Tells or threats yet. So we probably need to wait on this, because if we get one or the other, then we could draw the other one and be left behind here. Helm of Obedience. Sure, they don't have one of the guys that makes this good, but if they hit one of my guys randomly off of this, that's a big guy. Are they just spinning now? They got a Grizzlebrand. Sure, I suppose that's the thing that can happen. So we have been incredibly unlucky this game. Our opponent had 2 shoulders in the first game, and we happened to draw the Grizzlebrand rather than the Emrakul. And now they span on a 2 in 48 chance. Not a 2 in 48 chance. It was a 6 in 48 chance, and they managed to hit the Grizzlebrand. That's pretty bad for us. So what are we doing now? If we draw a Fury, we can kill it in 2 turns, but the damage is probably going to be done by them because they've got a million cards. If we draw a Brazen Borrower, that's fine. Alternatively, we can draw absolutely nothing. There's nothing the intuition can really get us in this situation, I don't think. I guess we didn't even have the option of spinning this to get a Force of Will last time. I think we're just in trouble here. So in theory, our opponent should be able to kill us on the next turn. So they can get Doughty Voidwalker off of this, play 4 for the Helm, and then play one other thing. I can't get ways of disrupting it with this, so I would need an additional blue card in hand. Okay, this has got to be a good one. Brainstorm. Oh, okay. That's something. So we want to keep this, and then this only needs to find us Show and Tell. But I think, how much mana have we got here? 1, 2. So we're going to have to crack this. So we have to crack this for blue mana. So not getting the Volcanic Island is hurting me now. We need to keep the Abrade because of what comes out of the Khan. So we're putting back the Polluted Delta, and then I guess we have to put back the Intuition. I can make a lot of treasure tokens, but Opposition Agent. Okay, so this can resolve. We have to kill this. They got another one? They do have another one. Okay, so I don't get to get my blue source to bounce them with the Brazen Borrower. Sure, that's pretty bad for us. But that's what happens when you have a Grizzlebrand in play, which is something that I wanted to have happen. And we can't use these Lotus Petals. Getting punished for this Volcanic Island. Microsynth Lattice, that's the game. Oh, thorough stomping from the mono black deck there. Like, they did get lucky in a few instances, but they have those cards in their deck for a reason. I think the second Shieldred was certainly unlucky, but the Helm of Obedience hitting that turn, so if they don't hit that turn, I draw that Grizzlebrand, I put that Grizzlebrand into play, and I win the game. So it's a pretty unfortunate margin there, but that's sometimes what happens. On to round 2. So into round 2 on the play, I have a turn 1 Show and Tell with nothing to put in. I don't have any way of filtering to find the things to put in, and if I Force of Will, then I have to use my Show and Tell. So I don't think I can actually keep this one. So this one is a slow hand, where I'd be trying to play turn 3, maybe the Fable of the Mirror Breaker, and hoping that turn 4 I get something good with it. I will have a Force of Will to keep me going in the meantime. Can I realistically keep a hand of no plays until turn 3 apart from Force of Will? I don't think I can. Again, we've got one of those annoying hands, but this one I think we have to keep because we can't really afford to go much lower. So we'll keep. So I think we have to keep the Fable of the Mirror Breaker here, which means I think we have to bottom these 2 and keep our mana sources because we're getting rid of our blue card. So I think it's not ideal, but that's what we have to do here. We activate this, activate this for red, and cast this. So this also makes us look like a prison deck rather than the deck we are. I can play out the Lotus Petal here in case they are a prison deck, but if our Lotus Petal gets Prismatic Ending, then we won't be able to play any blue spells, but we also already have the Goblin Shaman. Maybe it's wrong to play this out, so I can discard it to try and dig for something on Show and Tell. Once upon a time, so this could be most likely elves would be my assumption. They also have an elf avatar for their profile picture, so that's making me think elves, but we'll see depending on what they get here. Gaia's Cradle, so yeah, it's going to be elves. So we're not going to have the most amount of turn. Llanowar Elves isn't something you see out of elf builds all the time, which is interesting to me. Okay, so I have a Brainstorm, which is better than a random card. So we are not going to use Fable of the Mirror Breaker's ability. I think we'll crack this for blue and cast this Brainstorm. This isn't really what we're after, is it? We've got the land and the sneak attack, and we're sort of relying on the Goblin Shaman here, but I think that's okay. And then we have a Force of Will if we need it. And then we still have the sneak attack in that case. So this is the line that stops us from losing the game if they combo off. After the next turn, I can start cloning my token guy and getting more mana that way. But we've got a little while before we draw. We've got to get through 2 cards still. The Land Rails is tapping for mana, and it's untapping. And it's tapping. Okay, so the counter spell is now completely off. Beseiju. Yeah, this is great for us, because this gives us a shuffle effect. And it finds us a basic. Okay, I'm happy with that, weirdly. Because the gate at this point was the cards on my top of my library. I think they can probably win the game in the time that it would take me to draw through those, looking at how they're going. Obviously, our opponent didn't know that when they made that play, but that's just the way things are. Okay, so they didn't spend all their mana that turn. Intuition. So this gets us, this is 3 mana, it gets us our fatty. We only have 2 mana to put it in, so we have to wait until their end step, I think. We probably should have attacked him with the Goblin Shaman there, that was a mistake. So their Cradle can tap for lethal, but they're not attacking this turn, which is good for us. Cast Intuition. How many elves they have? They've got 3 elves. They're coming in for 10, so I think we actually have to get the Emrakul's. 1. If I get 1 turn with Emrakul, I win the game. This doesn't give them trample. Obviously the Craterhoof does, but I don't think I can beat Craterhoof. The 14 life I can stop isn't going to make a difference there. So we can't beat the Craterhoof. Okay, so we have the thing. We do the thing. Okay, our opponent just put in a Caracas. One of those days, is it? That's a singleton in their deck that they have to tutor with Elvish Reclaimer. That's pretty bad for me. Sure. Jeez. This is quite the unlucky league so far. We play this out. Should we play this out so we can brainstorm? Because Show and Tell is not going to do anything anymore. I think we're just dead, to be honest. So, I think this post board should be okay because we have the Furies, we have the Kozilek's Return, we have options. So our opponents should be able to... Why aren't they attacking us? But Sneak Attack doesn't do anything while I have a Caracas. Why? I don't know why my opponent isn't killing me, because they can make their guys huge just by tapping Cradle and force me to block. So we can either take 15 here, or we can hold up something else. I think we just take the 15. I don't think it's making a difference. We can block next turn. Okay, that's what they should have done last turn. Like, I should be dead. I should have been dead this turn. Kind of need to brainstorm into Show and Tell Omniscience. And I can cast my Emrakul and get extra turn. And just keep casting that every turn. Okay, that's how we win this game. Is it brainstorm? We're on a 1 outer because I need 2 cards. That is not one of the cards. Our opponent is just going to kill us next turn, so we'll concede the game. Oh, the curse continues. Let's board in some stuff that their creatures will hate. Fury is very good here. A Braid kills a creature. Kozilek's Return kills a creature. Am I in the mood for Magus of the Moon to stop their Cradle? I don't hate that as a play, but we want to try and just strip away their board as much as possible. So we want the Favour of the Mirror Breaker because we might have to win through a Caracas, and being able to copy Furies, which is basically game over. How useful are these Force of Wills? Honestly, I'm not sure they're that good. Like, they have the Allosaurus Shepherd guy. I know it's weird to board out Force of Will against a combo deck. I think we just want to keep picking them apart. So we need all these things. We need... So this was the Show and Tell Omniscience plan. Also, the Magus of the Moons can deal with Caracas if they're tutoring for Caracas. So I don't hate that as a plan either. Brazen Borrower. I'm not sure this is the Brazen Borrower matchup. I think we're better off just trying to burn their stuff, because these are going to do similar things but better. So we can probably trim on a Grizzlebrand here. We're playing a fairer game. For those, I think we can probably trim a Sneak Attack, so we're trying to just Fury here. Although, do we need the red cards for the red pips on the Fury? We might need the pips, so I think we're going to drop a Preordain. Yeah, I think we needed the red cards for that. So this hand requires blue mana. It requires Show and Tell. But aside from that, it's okay. If I play this Brainstorm and it's bad, and I Brainstorm lock myself and I lose the game. So this needs to find a fetch land and 3 cards. Doesn't have any of our sideboard cards. I think we have to mulligan. Okay, this hand lets me show and tell, but I have nothing to show and tell in. I have no cantrips, I have no sideboard cards. I don't think I can realistically keep this hand. Okay, so this has a Brainstorm and a Kozilek's Return, so I can keep this. It's got one of the things we want, so we can pitch a Flooded Strand, and we probably have to pitch another land. We'll probably find one with a Brainstorm before turn 3, I would imagine. So this is actually a situation where I'm in the market for brainstorming on their end step, because if I find show and tell and a soul land, then I can just put this in. And there's not many cards that I don't actually want in my hand. The only thing I don't want in my hand is another fatty. So I've got seven cards that I don't want. So being able to shuffle one of them away with a Scalding Tarn should probably be enough. And it sets us up for the possibility to effectively win the game on turn 2. Once upon a time. Let's have a Boseiju. That can blow up our sneak attack. So we don't want a sneak attack now. So that's another card we're not particularly in the market for. Alright, so brainstorm and see if we can hit those things we want. This is where we've just found 3 fatties. Okay. So we're not really in the market for Omniscience, I don't think. So the one card we will not have will be the Omniscience. We'll play this. And we'll crack this first because we know what's on top. So we'll get to see slightly more cards if we do it this way. Are they going to be running Wasteland? They're probably going to have a Singleton Wasteland in their deck. But I think we play out the Volcanic Island, because if they're messing around with Wasteland, I think we're doing alright. Okay, so we have a sneak attack. So the sneak attack will be good if we have them tapped out of mana. So they have to have 2 mana up. So we'll play out the Lotus Petal. If they Boseiju it, then it's the same difference. And then from next time we can hold up Kozilek's Return for when things get a bit scary. Okay, so they've played the Boseiju out. So the sneak attack is better now. Collector Oof. Well, they had the Lamar Elves as well, so maybe it's a weird build of Elves. I don't know. Like, Collector Oof isn't a strange one. I guess they could have just drawn their Singleton. But my opponent isn't playing loads of things out to the board that are really scary, so they're giving me plenty of time. And I get situations like this where I can play out the... If I play out the City of Traitors now, then I can use the Kozilek's Return end of turn, and then play Sneak Attack, activate Lotus Petal. That way I'm playing around the Boseiju. A Ranger. Sure, we'll take our 2s. Fiend Artisan. Sure. So I get to clean up their board quite nicely now. Red 2. Kozilek's Return. So I get to clean up their board and then attack them with a Grizzlebrand, which is what the deck wants to do. Red 2, 1. So Force of Vigor can't be beaten by the way I'm sequencing here. Okay, so let's draw 7 cards. And that's usually a good place to be. Okay, so getting rid of this now. I could draw 7 more cards. I think I will. It's quite a lot of cards. I have Emrakul. We have a follow-up sneak attack for next turn. I have Lotus Petals. So now we can't show and tell. We can play this out. We can play this out. Tap this for red. That's for 2. Play Magus. And then we've shut our opponent off of all their mana. Now we have to go clean up, but that's fine. I think shutting our opponent off all their mana there is the correct play. It means we have to wait 1 more turn before we can sneak attack in the Emrakul compared to where we were before. Or maybe even 2 turns. But I think reducing our opponent's ability to play the game is good there. And I always have an emergency Fury if they play a load of things out this turn somehow. Don't need all these lands. Keep a Brainstorm. Keep your Omniscience just in case. That may not have been the optimal one, I'm not sure. Having the ability to play the Fury and then also having mana so I can play Sneak Attack, follow it up by playing a land and getting them. And then I've also got a couple of cantrips if something from here goes wrong. Okay, our opponent didn't have a mana source they could do anything with. Play out Sneak Attack, go to attacks, and then next turn we kill them. If they have a Force of Vigor, I can get done here, so that was probably an error. Apologies. Should have just waited another turn to play that, really. Doesn't look like I'm going to be punished necessarily, but doesn't mean it wasn't an error if I don't get punished for it. There we go. Our opponent with no permanence in play. That's what we like to see. Yeah, I should have sandbagged the thing and just used a cantrip that turn instead. So I would have cantripped into favour the Mirror Breaker. That would have been a better play than playing this out. Because we've already seen the Force of Vigor as well. So because you're ahead doesn't mean you should play suboptimally. Okay, so now we've seen more of their deck. How do we feel about it? I like where I went with this. Putting in the removal. I don't think we want to be messing around with Force of Wills here, especially since their build looks like it's a lot slower. It's like a sort of grindier valuer build. You know, it's got the Fiend Artisans and things like that. And I haven't seen any Heritage Druids at all yet. So I think we'll just resubmit as is. Alright, this is our opening hand. So we're going to be asking for our Ponder to do a lot of work here, our Ponder and our Brainstorm. But we do have, if we just have lands, then we can get there with this. This can get us a Show and Tell, which can put us in the Omniscience and cast the Emrakul. So I think I'm going to believe in the power of Ponder and Brainstorm here. Our opponent also has a 61 card deck. Greenstone Zenith for Dryad Arbor. So ramping out. That's not one of the ones we wanted to see. So if we Brainstorm this turn, if we're Brainstorm locked, at least we can Ponder something away. We'll only be able to shuffle one of these cards away. I think the way we're most likely to lose this game is if we Ponder, shuffle, and then Brainstorm lock ourselves. So I think we're going to Brainstorm here. Okay, so that's it. So we can put back, so we're going to shuffle one of these away anyway. We can put back the Omniscience and the Grizzlebrand. So next turn we Ponder, shuffle it away, and we're just looking for more mana sources at that point. We have the Emergency Fury that we can pitch to Sneak Attack because we want to play the Show and Tell game anyway. Dryad Arbor, so they're not playing much this turn. It's quite tempting to Fury here, but I think we can get better, and I don't think they're liable to combo me off next turn. We haven't seen a lot of combo stuff, so I think they are value. Thoughtseize. Now this is interesting. This has a lot of options of what I can do for them. I've taken the Fury. Let's Ponder. We won't play our land first in case we get a fetch land. Okay, so we have the things here. We have the land we wanted. This on the bottom, this, and this. We don't want to shuffle our library. We'll play out. So we're secure in our Show and Tell plan even through a wasteland here. Unless they have more. The problem is if they have more Thoughtseize. If they have more Thoughtseize, they're not killing us this turn. So gives us more turn. Okay, this guy is not particularly threatening right now. So they get one turn with this guy active before I get to Show and Tell them. Volcanic Island. Play this out. And then we Intuition. What does this get? Search low for a creature card with mana X or less. So they could get an opposition agent here, which is something I have to decide if I want to play around now or not. So if I go this now, then I'm playing around the opposition agent. But I can't play around Thoughtseize anyway because they'll hit the Intuition. So I think we cast this now to play around an opposition agent being in their deck. Okay. If they manage to get rid of my Show and Tell, then I'm in a little bit of trouble because the Sneak Attack's not going to be great in the face of Caracas. It does mean they have to keep their Caracas up all the time, but if that stops them from losing the game, that's a pretty worthwhile thing to do. Green on Zenith for 1. Nilosaurus Shepherd. And there's the Cradle. So the one play I was worried about is them having a creature with a triggered ability. Because if I Show and Tell, put in the Omniscience, they put in a creature with a triggered ability, I don't get the chance to play a sorcery before they can Force of Vigor, a sorcery speed spell. I think we are fine here. We get to Show and Tell our... Let's play this land as well so we can Flusterstorm something if needs be. So we Show and Tell Omniscience here, and then we cast the Emrakul. So this is a lock for them, basically, because if they bounce it, then I just replay it. Cast Omniscience. We don't really need to do anything here. We just go to our next turn. We can draw in response if it becomes necessary. Feels like we've won this game now. It's been begin combat. So this turn they'll bounce it, but then I'll replay it, and then on my next turn, I will kill them. Force of Vigor on the Omniscience. How many spells have been cast this turn? I think we'll draw 7 here. We need to get a higher storm count to counter this Force of Vigor. So we'll cast this Brainstorm. Why am I casting it with mana? That's crazy. Okay, we'll put these back, I guess. So Storm is currently 2, so this would make them have to pay 3. Cast Omniscience targeting this. It can't be countered because they have Allosaurus Shepherd. What am I doing? What am I doing? That was a weird play. I can just Show and Tell again this turn though. Sorry, you had to watch that. So we can either shut off all their green mana, which is the play I like best, I think. If we shut off all of their mana What are they going to do? They've got no cards in hand. We'll just do this and play this island and cast a ponder. Any order. Okay, so we have an active Grizzlebrand. They have only mountains. Which makes the Moon doing sterling work in these games. So now we can 1, 2, 3, 4. Play sneak attack. This guy in. Go to attacks. Okay, so it was a little bit ugly from me there, but we managed to finally navigate our way through and get a win on the board. After the Caracas in game 1, that was a little bit annoying. We pulled it out. All right, on to round 3. So we're on the play for round 3. This is what we've opened up. We have Preordain. We have a Force of Will. We're just looking for one of our things to enable Grizzlebrand here. I think this is probably fine. It's not the most explosive, but I have a little bit of protection and I have the Grizzlebrand here, so I'm going to keep this. I'm actually just going to play Island Go here and hold up the Flusterstorm. I could use the Preordain, but I can just use that on turn 2 without actually really interfering with what else I've got going on. This means I can get a 1-for-1 off of something this turn, perhaps. It insulates against some sort of combo deck, basically. My opponent's playing a Chalice of the Void. This is not something I want to resolve because I need to Preordain, so I will cast this. I'll exile the Flusterstorm because if they're a prison deck, there's not many targets for the Flusterstorm because there's mainly permanents they're playing. Let's have a look with the Preordain. Ancient Tomb and a Scalding Tarn. Put these on the bottom because we have enough mana already. We drew a Brainstorm. So I think we hold the Brainstorm to next turn to use with a fetch, but if we need to use it for dealing with something our opponent does, perhaps we can fish for a Force of Will, or we can get the value before a Chalice comes down. Okay, so we've got 2 cards left in hand now. Goblin Rabblemaster. How much do I care about Goblin Rabblemaster? I think I'm going to Brainstorm this turn anyway because I want to be able to hit my combo as soon as possible. These aren't great hits. We'll put these 2 back and then we'll let this resolve. So this is representing quite a quick clock. So this is a card we knew about, so we have to play out one of our lands to get rid of what's on top of our library. Now we have the ability to sneak attack, we have the ability to show and tell if we draw them, but we probably only have a couple of turns to try and draw them. Another Goblin Rabblemaster. That is a significant escalation of the situation we are in. So we are dead on our next turn, on their next turn. So we have 1 draw step. So we crack this. Volcanic Island. This has got to be good. Sneak attack. Is sneak attack good enough? Oh no, I can't actually activate it, can I? I don't have enough red mana. So the sneak attack's no good. We've got to concede. Oh, close. The double islands I started with were a problem there. Alright, so Kozilek's Return kills lots of little goblins. Fury kills lots of little goblins. Braid kills goblins and also deals with some of the artifacts they're going to have that might be an issue for us. Fable of the Mirror Breaker seems alright here as well. Don't think I have to worry about any of these things. Meltdown blows up chalices and such like. And what we want here is probably trimming some of our cantrips because we don't want to get stuck in a situation where we're unable to cast spells under a chalice. The Force of Will seems essential here. The Brazen Borrower seems essential. To require the intuition here, it can go and get Fury of Braid and Kozilek's Return. Okay, so that can get Kozilek's Return. So I think we probably trim on the Grizzlebrand there. The Omniscience is still good to put in with a Show and Tell, but I don't think it's as essential. 3 more cards to cut. We need to keep our Force of Wills. The Flusterstorms, as we discussed, were very bad, so we can trim those. And we can probably trim either a Ponder or an Omniscience here. Because I don't think we need to use the Omniscience Emrakul plan here, so we can just trim that. There's an argument for playing Makers of the Moon, not because it's good against what they're doing, but because it's a 2/2 and blocks Goblin Rabblemaster. Is that something I'm in the market for, is the question. Is being able to block a Goblin Rabblemaster better than having an Omniscience? Weirdly, I think it might be quite a lot of the time, which is an odd thing to say. Alright, let's try this. I don't think we want to trim anything else for another one, but it's just another way I can trade with a Goblin. So the ideal plan here is to go off quickly. This blows up something scary, but we're a ways away from comboing, so we're going to mulligan. This is an odd one. I have a load of my neighbours, but I don't have any payoffs, and I don't have any way of digging, and I have a Brazen Borrower to buy me some time, but I don't think that's realistic. So what about this hand? This hand makes a turn 1 Grizzlebrand, so we keep this hand. So we need to keep Ancient Tomb, Lotus Petal. I think we want the Meltdown, just in case they have some sort of prison effect, so we can blow it up later. So I think we say done, and we can make a turn 1 Grizzlebrand. Okay, so they have a Blood Moon, which is fine. I guess I'm always going to draw 7 here, but if I think I draw 7 here in case I need to play out any Lotus Petals. So there's a Lotus Petal there. If we draw another 7, okay, they're just going to scoop it up. Sure, so on the draw, is there any difference that we want here? I think we are relatively happy with where we're at. So I think we'll submit. So what does this hand do? It gives me a counter spell for the first scary thing. It lets me build up, try and ponder into something to go with my show and tell. But if I have to force and will, then I won't have the show and tell. I won't have the ponder, so I'll basically be trying to draw into one of our things or a cantrip. We're fine against Blood Moon here. I think we keep this one, and we might have to hinge on our force of will a little bit. So we can always force of will pitching the ponder if we're feeling lucky. Chalice of the Void. Okay, so this is a 0 Chalice of the Void, so we don't have to worry about that. It stops our Lotus Petals, but that's not the end of the world. Okay, so we can still ponder this turn, which is the main thing we wanted to do. Okay, so we have a Brainstorm for next turn. Let's ponder this turn. And we also have a blue card guaranteed. Show and Tell, Fury. So we can take the Show and Tell here, leave the Fury on top, so we draw the Fury next turn. So we have insurance against Ramblemaster, but then shuffle away the sneak attack to then Brainstorm. Is that any good? I think it should be. This gives us a bonus blue card, effectively. Maybe that's wrong. I'm not sure. I've got a game plan that I'd like to execute here. I want to counter the thing that's really scary. This means the Fury means I don't have to counter a Rabblemaster. So I just have to counter something like a Trinisphere. A Chalice for 1 might be worth countering here. Just because it's going to slow us down a lot. A Blood Moon. Do we care about Blood Moon? Blood Moon means we can't shuffle away with our Brainstorm. Is that enough for me to counter it? I don't think it is. I think we can just play the slightly longer game and counter the actual scary things. Because we have the land. And we have a Fury that we can cast to deal with their guys. So I think this is okay. And we just hold back waiting for the really scary things. Does mean we're going to be spending a while drawing up like this. So we're going to wait another turn for the Brainstorm, I think. Yeah, because it doesn't really matter with the Brainstorm just yet. We want to see more cards. Especially if we're going to be Brainstorm locked. We might as well try and see the maximum amount of cards we have available to us. A Goblin Rabblemaster. So next turn I can pitch the Fury to kill the Rabblemaster. That seems fine to me. In an ideal world I would like to have cast the Fury, but I'm not always living in an ideal world. Since we're a very long way off of casting the Fury as well. I think we have to counter the second Rabblemaster there. So we're drawing the sneak attack turn. And then we cast our Brainstorm. Let's see what we have. So we have something to show and tell in, which is nice. We can't do that this turn. And we can't cast through these, so I think we put these on the bottom. On the top even. The Ponder lets us shuffle away, so that's why I'm putting that one first. We play this out. We cast this by exiling a red card. 3 and 1. So that deals with that problem, and then next turn we get to play Grizzlebrand. So if we Brainstormed at the end of turn, we could have had a Grizzlebrand that turn. But I wanted to see more cards, because if things went badly, I would need to see more cards in my deck. So we still have the Force of Will, Show and Tell, because we didn't waste it on these things that don't actually impact our game plan. Legion Warboss. Do I care about Legion Warboss? I don't think Grizzlebrand cares about Legion Warboss. Their creatures have to attack into my Grizzlebrand next turn, which is going to be bad for them. So I'm going to get 7 life off of them. I don't think we have to crack the Grizzlebrand for cards immediately either. Cast this. Blue, red, red. A Fury. So that's going to deal 4 damage to this, but that's not going to be enough. So we can... Okay, they're just going to scoop it up then. Sure. So that's 2 and a 1. Yeah, that matchup felt alright. It felt like game 2 and I have a little bit of ways of disrupting them in terms of their creatures instead of the Flusterstorms and things. It just smooths it out enough that I can ignore many of their prison pieces in favour of just comboing off. Also boarded out more 1-drops as well, which I think if they had a chance on 1 would have been useful as well. So yeah, I was quite happy with that one. Let's go to round 4. So this is my opening hand. It requires more mana sources, but that's all it requires, which is the most abundant thing in my deck. I have a Brainstorm to try and help that out, and I have a Flusterstorm to protect, so I can turn 1 Volcanic Island, hold up the Flusterstorm, and then also hold up the Brainstorm in case of a Wasteland. So I'm going to keep this. A Ponder. Okay, so opponents played a Ponder, and they're a Yori on deck, which means they're going to be probably counter spells and just good green stuff. Okay, we're going to play out this and try and maybe hit some of the Flusterstorm. Ideally, we want to save the Brainstorm for our own turn. I'm not expecting Wastelands out of this Euron deck since it started on blue, rather than being the Death and Taxes list. So it looks like it's probably just going to be the green Zenith deck. It has a load of value in it. And probably Minsk and Boo as a curve topper. Okay, so that was quite fortuitous. I don't think they're playing Days, but we'll play this out just in case they are. We have no reason to Brainstorm now. We can do it in their turn. So we can hold open more things and make them think about what we're doing more. Anything, including Counterspell, could be coming out of me as far as they're concerned. Okay, I don't care about this. It does have Death Touch, or it can get Death Touch when they have enough snow permanents. Hooray. Sure. So this matchup might be one that requires me to bring in defense grids, because they're not doing anything too broken. They're just sort of a lot of value grinding and things and countering the scary things. We have double show and tell to try and force through our combo though. So we're going to Brainstorm in a turn, see if we can fix up our hand a little bit. We certainly don't need 2 Emrakuls. Okay, so we have a lot of resources here. I kind of want all of them, to be honest. So we put this Brainstorm and this Lotus Petal back. Then we're not even going to shuffle. I think we just have everything we want here. We can Flusterstorm with... We can show and tell with Flusterstorm backup this turn. And the question is, which of these creatures am I supposed to put in? So I can get hit with the Swords to Plowshares if I play the Grizzlebrand, whereas the Emrakul can't. So that's an important one to keep an eye on. I think we want to put the Emrakul in. This one will draw us cards if it survives. So is that better than annihilating all their permanents? Possibly. I think it's a bit of a case of having my diamond shoes too tight. This is whenever you play a land, so this doesn't impact. Okay, I'm just getting to put it in straight away. So we're putting in the Grizzlebrand. In case of Caracas, at least we can draw some things. If we draw right now, the last show and tell resolved, but do we care about resolving another show and tell right now because our opponent might have a Supreme Verdict in their deck? So I'm going to pass the turn and I'm going to draw in their turn. I know there's a Brainstorm on top of my library. It's a case of if I want that Brainstorm or not. Expressive Iteration. I don't think we care about this, and it builds Storm to make our Flusterstorm stronger. Sure, they can Brainstorm. So my Flusterstorm is now a hard counter, for instance, in sorceries, so they won't be able to remove my Grizzlebrand this turn. I probably should have fetched first. We might as well get Volcanic Island looking at the way that's panned out here. Okay, they're just scooping up. Okay, so they're going to be trying to counterspell us. So defense grid is where we want to be. 1 defense grid, 2 defense grid, 3 defense grid. So that's a good place for us to be. So they've got Swords to Plowshares, things like that, which is fine. Don't think we care about that too much. The Mages of the Moon is actually very good against these decks because they have so many basics and get to rely on abundant growth. So I don't think we actually want the Mages of the Moons here. The Red Elemental Blast and Pyroblast are very good. They can kill their threats and they can also deal with the counter spells. So what are we taking out? I don't think this is one of the matchups where we want Faber the Mirror Breaker. Brazen Borrower. What are they going to have that I need to be worried about? That I need to Brazen Borrow. They've got Death Touch Snakes, which I don't care about too much. The Collector Roofs can be a little bit annoying. But I think we're probably playing a slower game as well, so we don't need to super duper ramp out as quickly. You can probably just play it marginally slower, so you can probably trim a Lotus Petal. The Omniscience will be very good here because you get the cast trigger off of this. It'll stop them having things like Supreme Verdict to ruin my day. They're probably going to have some amount of Pithing Needle of some description. Because we're going slower, I think I probably brought out a couple of Preordains. The question is, do I want Furies in there just to deal with all their little snakes and things? I don't know if that's necessary. I think if we can get either of these into play, that should be enough. So I'm going to submit like this and then maybe reappraise for the next game. So this hand is part way there. And I have filter spells, but I don't have blue mana. I think I'd rather have a more stable mana base and play like a slightly slower game here. So I'm going to mulligan this one. Okay, so we have two, so we can test them with the first one. We have a Ponder to go digging a little bit. I think this is fine. We'll probably put back the Volcanic Island here. So we're just going to use the Ponder to sculpt this game is the plan. And sort of only show and tell when we're ready, but we've got two of them, so we can force one through in theory. Because they'll definitely burn a counterspell on the first one. Okay, so we found something to put in as well. That's good. So we're going to Ponder. We're looking for things like Defense Grid, ideally, Pyroblast. Okay, so we can probably just play show and tell after show and tell after show and tell into sneak attack until one of them sticks, which I don't hate. So we put this on the bottom, then the Brainstorm, then the show and tell. Maybe I shouldn't have 3 show and tells in my hand at once. Okay, so we're just going to start jamming show and tell next turn, I think. I think once Emrakul is in play, especially if it's way before they have Supreme Verdict mana, I think we just win with it. And they can't really answer it. I'm expecting this one to get countered. Sure, Spell Pierce. We've got 3 show and tells and a sneak attack, so one of them's going to stick. Uro, sure. Show and tell. So we could put the sneak attack in here and destroy all their permanents. Is an option we have. This could be a Pyroblast. A Spell Pierce again, sure. We don't need to cast the Brainstorm this turn. A Narset, sure. What are they going to show us? A Force of Will. Okay, so we know they have a Force of Will. They're going to Wasteland my Ancient Tomb. So the Brainstorm I could have set off in response to the Narset, I think would have been the better play there. Sure, so we're trying to draw a mana source. So we can Brainstorm in their hand in their turn and draw 1 and put 2 on top, which isn't great. But it'll let me shuffle something away if that's a thing I want to do. The Grizzlebrand doesn't look great. So we're in on the slow one there. So they got a Force of Will. Minsk and Boo. So this is an issue because they're just going to kill us very quickly. I definitely should have fired off the Brainstorm response to the Narset. That was definitely a misstep on my part. Okay, so this clock doesn't take long to be lethal for us. So we can play this and crack this. Get a mountain because we've seen a wasteland. So we know that this one isn't going to resolve. Is it worth jamming it anyway? I think it is worth jamming to try and get rid of a counterspell. So we're looking to draw. What can we even draw here, to be honest? because this is going to go up to 7 and hit us down to 4. And then even if I put something into play, they can just sacrifice end of turn, so I'm not going to be able to attack with the Emrakul. I don't think I have any outs here. I guess they could miss the fling option, but that seems unlikely. They'll take a lot of time on their clock anyway, so may as well let them puzzle it out. Okay, they're just going to fling a different one. Sure, whatever. Alright, so I don't hate my plan for that I had for that one. It just had a lot of disruption for me. There's certainly an option of bringing in something like Surgical Extraction to hit one of their counter spells and let me peek to see if the coast is clear. But I think we just want to play into our defense grids and Pyroblast, and we're on the play this time, so I think we're in a better shape. So we're going to submit. So this hand has some Force of Wills and stuff, but it doesn't really go anywhere, so we're going to mulligan. This has no lands. This one doesn't have a blue source, but has kind of everything else I want. So I guess we Petal Ponder and hope for the best here. So we go keep. So what do we want here? We need to keep these. We need to keep this. So can we afford to keep the Red Blast? So I think the Red Blast has to go. And then it's probably the Omniscience. We're playing a sneak attack game here. Not a fan of this one. We know they have Wastelands in their deck. Let's see if this Ponder works. It sees more cards. We need to hit a land. Jeez Louise. I think we have to shuffle. We need the mana. Going to be one of those games. I think if we play out the Ancient Tomb and we get Wastelanded, we're basically out of the game. But if we don't play out the Ancient Tomb, they'll definitely wasteland everything else that comes after it. So it's kind of awkward. We need to hit a blue source. Okay, so we didn't hit the land, so we're in trouble. There's always a possibility with this hand. There's a combo deck and it kind of had the things I wanted. The main thing it was missing was land. And at least I had, what, 4, 5, 6? I had 6 looks at a land before I needed one. And we've missed them. We have 4 off the Ponder and then 2 draw steps. Or 1 draw step. If our opponent finds a wasteland, we lose the game, I'm pretty sure. Again, it could be a slow one because they don't clock quickly unless they get Minsk and Boo in play generally. Okay, not a wasteland, that's good for us. Does mean they'll probably Spell Pierce any Brainstorms we cast. Okay, so they're not going to have a Spell Pierce available. Omniscience. Not a wasteland. That's good for us. Show and tell. That's not good for us. Does mean at least that if we get land, we can show and tell our Omniscience in and cast Grizzlebrand and sneak attack. But our opponent's got a load of cards in hand, and we're just drawing nothing here. This is the problem with combo decks sometimes. You hit fail rate. I figured it was better to need the thing that's most prevalent in my deck, which is lands, than go to 4 cards. Like 1 mana source, as long as it wasn't the Singleton Mountain, would have been able to start casting these Brainstorms. So we're dead on the next turn. Ponder, which we can't cast. So we're just dead. We just concede the game. Sure, so the deck beat us then rather than our opponent, which is sometimes what happens. I could have kept one of the earlier hands of Ponders and maybe played the game a little bit slower. Maybe that would have been an option to take. But I think if you've got a game plan, because I'm going to lose a long game against this deck because that's what this deck is designed to do. So I need to at least have a game plan in my opening hand, which is why I mulliganed the way I did. Didn't work though, so on to the next game. This hand has no blue mana sources. This hand doesn't really do anything. If I preordain, the Force of Will is probably not live anyway, so we mulligan again. This hand has a little bit of protection, has the mana to cast sneak attack, so I'm just going to be looking for a creature. So I think we can keep this. So we don't need 2 Ancient Tombs for a start. And we probably bottom the Tropic Island and we can go and get it if we need to. Okay, Tundra. This is giving me the impression it's going to be a slow game. Be another one of these Yorion decks. Okay, so just playing draw go with us. I don't want to cast the sneak attack until I have something to do with it, because they could be a 4-color deck, so they could be able to prismatic ending it. So I don't really want to put this into play in the near future. So I think we're just going to play out a Polluted Delta. We're also keeping guessing as to what we are. We're not playing out the Lotus Petal for similar reasons. Sure, so it looks like we've queued into the same deck again, which I don't think was a terrible matchup. I just drew very, very poorly in game 3. A slight misstep in game 2. Alright, let's go. So we have a City of Traitors here. So I think we play out the Ancient Tomb here. We kind of need the Lotus Petal for our second red, but if we play it out, we can hardcast a Force. So that's the things we're looking at here. How important is it to me to hardcast a Force when I need a second red? I think we can probably just just pitch cast it. So we've got Brainstorm in their exile zone. Okay. That's certainly a thing that could happen, but we have a City of Traitors to replace it with. Okay, so we have another Force of Will. Is it worth us playing out the City of Traitors this turn? I think we have Force of Will with Flusterstorm backup. We're just waiting for all these many cantrips and intuitions in our deck to show up, really. This isn't a Minsk and Boo turn because they would have played it pre-combat, so they could get the attack in. So that's the main thing I want to use my Force of Will on. An Uro, I don't care about the front side of Uro. Here's one of them there Brainstorms I've been looking for. Our opponent might counter this because they know that we've been looking for things. Okay, so we have some of the things we require here. So we have Force of Will and Flusterstorm here. And we want to play out our City of Traitors, and we want to play out our Lotus Petal. So I think we go next turn. So I think we put Misty Rainforest, City of Traitors. So we're going to draw the City of Traitors next turn and play this out. So we're gonna cast Sneak Attack next turn with the City of Traitors, and then we're gonna use the Lotus Petal to put extra red mana in, so we can put the Grizzlebrand in, hopefully dig into Emrakul and Lotus Petal and kill them. So I didn't tap out for anything this turn. Shame, no Minsk or Booze would have reduced their mana. Okay, so they're escaping Uro, which is fine by me, because Uro is not as good as Grizzlebrand. Although, not a million miles away, to be honest. It's a pretty absurd creature. So they have less mana to pay for things next turn. Okay, so start out with this. Play this out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cast a Sneak Attack. I'm assuming they're going to have a counter spell. I also have a counter spell. Okay. So now we do the thing. And we activate. We get 1 activation to try and find an Emrakul here. Did not find an Emrakul. We can play Ponder off of this, and then Simian Spirit Guide to try and find an Emrakul. Or a Grizzlebrand. So we found the Grizzlebrand, so put this, this, this. Shock Library Note. Exile this guy. Put creature on the battlefield. Draw 7 cards because you get an Emrakul and Lotus Petal. We did not hit those things. Okay, so then we go to attacks. So what do we actually do next turn? We can show and tell Omniscience and play a load of cantrips. We can't go to 7. We have to be on 14 because they have 7 on the swing. So I think we have to say go here. We get a clean up. So we don't want this mountain. We've got Ponder, Brainstorm, so keep one of each. Because the Preordain can shuffle away. So our opponent's going to have another card to look at this turn because they're going to overwrite. Green Sun Zenith for 2. Okay. So using that as just a redraw to try and find a counter spell. Play the Lotus Petal. Then I think we cast the Ponder. Because these scry, so we want to shuffle first. These cards are good if I want the intuition. If the Omniscience resolves, they're good. If Omniscience doesn't resolve, they're not good, which is bad for us. It's a tricky one. I think we don't shuffle our library here. And we go for the show and tell here. We've only got 3 cards in hand. They've already cast Force of Will. They've cast 2 Force of Wills. They don't have mana to hard cast Force of Will. They have another Force of Will. Jeez. So much for being an 80 card deck, I suppose. So bouncing the Euro will keep us alive if that's a thing we have to do. So I think we preordain this turn in case we find one of our things. So if we put this on the top, we can go again next turn if we survive. So if we put this on the bottom of library, put this on the top, then cast Petty Theft on this guy, cracking this for blue. We've got another chance of spinning the wheel next turn. No. Okay, they're drawing a card. Surely not. A Brainstorm, okay. Unless they got main deck Pyroblast. Okay, so we have to survive another turn. They have 3 damage, and we have to hope that they don't have a counter spell for the next turn. They've only got 1 more Force of Will in their deck. They didn't Mystic Sanctuary there, so I have to assume they don't have a Mystic Sanctuary in their deck. This could be a Minsk and Boo though and kill me. No, it's 4, 5, 6, 7. This could be Exacties with Minsk and Boo. Prismatic Ending. Sure, that doesn't affect our plan because we're just going to Omniscience them. And then get Emrakul. Burrow. Sure. They get 1 more redraw. But they won't have any ability to Force of Will. They play their land out. Okay, so we managed to wrestle this one to victory, I think, here. I don't think there's anything that can scupper us now. Famous last words, I know, but... Okay. Oh, we even drew the Emrakul. What's this? Blue, blue, blue. This is one of the things I was going to get. Anyway, so basically I can just use these to chain turns and just destroy their permanents and then also their life total. Alright, so the defense grids we brought in last time, the Pyroblast, the Red Elemental Blast. I think that was it. Maybe I should be trying to just get them with Magus of the Moon. Like I can make a turn 1 Magus of the Moon before they get to fetch. Maybe that is okay here. Like, they're a 4-color deck. I should be bringing in Magus of the Moon. It should be good enough, right? Okay, I should get rid of that. I think we can trim on the mana slightly. I don't think we need 4 Grizzlebrands. I don't think the Brazen Borrow is good here. Trim on a Grizzlebrand, and then trim on some of these. The reason I leave this in over these is because this can mess up the opponent's maths. One of these. Does that look okay to me? Sure. This hand doesn't do anything, so I have to mulligan. This hand certainly has a game plan. It will require a little bit of sculpting and some mana, but I think we can keep this. I think we bottom the Force of Will here. because we don't really want to pitch our show and tell. Okay, so we have show and tell omniscience plan available. We play this in case they play a wasteland. So if they tap out on turn 2, we can try the show and tell, or we can hold on and wait. Because we have the sneak attack as well, give us more options, but we really want to find a soul land or a defense grid or something. Okay, so we have a force of will, so we can force of will omniscience this turn. But they have mana up. Is there any need to go right now is the question. If I play my land out and it gets wastelanded, then I'm going to feel pretty bad about that. Is it worth going this turn? Or is it worth waiting another turn? If I play my land out and get wastelanded, it's really bad. Is force of will backup enough? If they do have double force of will, they're not going to have a hand. So I think it's okay to go now. We're already exposed to wasteland, so we may as well. Actually, no, because we're playing our own Maguses, aren't we? Let's cast this. Sure. This has Death Touch, but it won't get to block unless they have 6 other permanents. So, okay, they're just conceding. So that was the end of that league. We went 3-2. Let's have a look at the deck. All right, so let's talk about some of the matchups we had there. We lost that one game to the Yorion deck where I didn't have the mana and I kept a hand that kind of just needed to draw a blue source, I think, and it would have been okay, and we missed. But again, that's part of the fail rate for the deck. Other than that, I think losing to the black deck in the manner we did was a little bit unfortunate because they spun their Helm of Obedience for 2 and it just happened to get a Grizzlebrand that I would have drawn and put into play on the following turn. So I can feel a little bit annoyed about that one. So the 2 games we lost were pretty thin margins for the 2 rounds we lost, in my opinion. So how do I feel about this deck? I don't want to be that guy, but I quite enjoy playing it. I think it's got a lot of raw power, and when you do your combo, like traditional things like removal spells aren't actually good because this one is immune to removal spells and this one draws you 7 or 14 cards. So even if they remove you, it doesn't really matter that much. So I think it's quite good in that respect. I like the defense grids in the board. Didn't get to see them, unfortunately, but that's sometimes the way Magic goes. Still managed to win one of the rounds where I wanted them, though. The single intuition is nice as just a way of getting any of your combo pieces that you want. Obviously, it can't guarantee an omniscience if that's what you're in the mood for, but it can get you either your sneak attack, your force of will, your Grizzlebrand, etc., etc. And post-board, I think it's nice that you've got these 3 options for sweeping, so you can go and get something that will definitely sweep the board if you need it. Magus of the Moon, I thought, was really good, and because people were bringing in things like Force of Vigor, like the elf player who brought in the Force of Vigor to take out our sneak attacks, Magus of the Moon was just really good against them because they couldn't interact with it. So yeah, I quite like this deck, actually. I would play it again. I think getting to know some of the lines that were better would help me out there. I made a couple of missteps that cost me a bit, maybe even cost me a whole game against that Yorion deck. But again, not really played Sneak Attack before, so I'm just sort of going through the various archetypes and seeing how they all feel. So yeah, overall I enjoyed this, and if you enjoyed my stream, then please subscribe. I need to get as many subscribers as I can, so go ahead and click that button. Doesn't cost you anything, but it helps me out. Alright, thank you for watching, and goodbye.